in DeWitt, Macon, and Piatt counties. Good morning, Caitlin. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for asking. And you know your topic today, summer sun safety. I was kind of thinking in preparation of our time together today. I mean, I know it's been a nice summer, but I don't know why it just feels like, man, maybe it's just because when it's not sunny outside, I guess I notice it more. But for some odd reason, it just feels like we haven't had as much sun maybe this year as we have in years past. I could be totally wrong, but that's just kind of the feeling I'm getting this time of the year right now.
Well, and it's starting to sprinkle on me over here,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah.
That could be it. It's just the fact it rained last night and this morning, so maybe I'm feeling a little just down altogether. But at any rate, Caitlin, let's talk summer sun safety because there's so many avenues to take this. First of all, just the safety of if you're out in the sun, precautions to take, to stay hydrated, not get sunburned. I mean, some of the basic things that we think about when we go out in the sun. Let's start there.
Yeah, so definitely folks in dermatology can very much cover this topic on why sun exposure, excess sun exposure is not great for your skin in terms of risk of skin cancer, but also advanced aging. For me, on the nutrition realm, my look is how do we balance that wearing of like sunscreen or wearing hats or trying to keep our skin covered when we're outside, but also knowing that vitamin D is required by our bodies. And one of the pathways is by converting sunlight that touches our skin into vitamin D, and it gets processed in a couple other pathways to become vitamin D that gets used by the bones and helps make hormones and is involved in cholesterol, and it's does a lot of things. So with that, one recommendation is to get, especially during the summer months, like right when the sun is super high in that sky, about 10 minutes or so of sun exposure can usually get you to that threshold for your daily vitamin D. For folks with darker skin, they do need longer exposure. So they would need closer to maybe 15 or 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then from there, really cover up. We do want to avoid skin cancer and advanced aging from that sun exposure. And if for many reasons people live in different altitudes, the sun may not be as hot. And then during winter, the sun is out, we hope, in the winter, but it doesn't hit the right angle to really activate the use of vitamin D through the skin. And so we do usually have to look at supplemental vitamin D during the summer. So especially if you live in northern climates, if you're living in Alaska, if you're living at a really high latitude, I think I said altitude earlier. I should have said latitude, where you probably are taking supplemental vitamin D. So you're taking vitamin D drops. You're maybe getting pills with supplemental vitamins, vitamin D, or you might be making sure that you're getting vitamin D through food. So
Mm-hmm.
most of our dairy products are supplemented, so cow's milk, and then a lot of our plant-based milk, soy milk, hemp milk, almond milk, have vitamin D added, so we're getting vitamin D that way. And then a really fun one that I'll leave before I'll stop talking for a moment, but there are some mushrooms that under UV light, so like outside, will activate and create their own vitamin D. And then we get the benefit because we get to eat that. So if you're ever shopping for mushrooms in the store, see if you can find a couple brands that might have that might be sold and have that little like, hey, these are vitamin D rich mushrooms.
Yeah, sure. You mentioned the various ways we can get vitamin D, and I think for a lot of folks they think of just being out in the sun, and that's a great source, particularly on your eyes and the UV rays on your eyes and such. Great health benefits. What are some of the things that vitamin D does for us, Caitlin? Whether we're getting it naturally through food, through sun, or we're taking supplements, what's the benefit of that vitamin D intake for us, or just that vitamin D exposure for us?
Yeah, so vitamin D works with calcium and phosphorus to help strengthen bones. So that is a big piece of what it does. It also works with the immune system. And so having adequate vitamin D helps to support all the different immune cells in your body. There's some research too around managing, because we talked off air about I've got some diabetes classes that I'm teaching. vitamin D can work in relation to supporting better carbohydrate metabolism for folks that have diabetes. So if there's a deficiency related to that, they may be able to add some vitamin D, and that may also support their blood sugar goals as they're working through that disease. And then also for blood pressure. So there's mechanisms around vitamin D use in how we regulate blood pressure and helping lower blood pressure for folks that have higher blood pressure. The challenge with pretty much every vitamin and mineral that we talk about with nutrition, most of the time we don't see any ill issues. We don't see any problems unless you are truly deficient. If you're getting adequate amounts, you're not going to see a lot of benefits from adding more. But vitamin D seems to be the exception. Most people are pretty deficient in vitamin D, and so that may be something that at your next physical or a future office visit with your doctor, you may ask him, "Hey, can you add a vitamin D test to my next blood draw, so we can see how that looks?" Some people are pretty deficient, and so we talked about you can supplement it. You can have it through food. You might also be given vitamin D shots to kind of just get you back up to levels that we consider more healthful.
Interesting stuff. Anything else on vitamin D, Caitlin, we did not touch on this morning you want to put out there for us?
Oh, so in terms of supplemental, do read labels. Supplements are usually pretty concentrated. So the goal can be to look for about 100% of that daily value, but only take a really high dose if you've got that confirmation from something like a blood draw and your doctor says, "Yep, you're pretty deficient. We are going to put you on a higher dose." But for everyday use, if you're going to supplement, aim for about that 100%. Most of your supplement labels will tell you that.
Interesting stuff. Caitlin Mellendorf, nutrition educator, U of I Extension in DeWitt, Macon, and Piatt counties. Caitlin, I've told you in the past and talked about this on the air before. I've got a garden that I share with a buddy of mine out in the rural area of DeWitt County, and he came over the other day and told me tomatoes are starting to pop up, and I'm sure if folks even got an even earlier start, or maybe they've even got those kind of springtime vegetables, they are probably in a full harvest at this point. Let's talk kind of some of those summer foods, preservation, utilization, what we can do with those. Let's dive into that here this morning.
Well, definitely putting them in my belly is first time. Summer is such a great time. We have a lot of produce that grows really well in Illinois. And so as people are, as you said, for you've got a garden. For folks that maybe can find roadside stands, farmers markets, sometimes even local stores will have a section of local produce, which is nice. So you can buy that locally. But the goal is eat it, right? We know that fruits and vegetables have good health benefits. They've got different vitamins, they've got minerals, they've got fiber, which supports blood pressure as well, or supports blood sugar management, so like with diabetes care, and with better bowel movements. So fiber is a great thing for those fruits and vegetables. And in terms of what do you do with all of it? Because that is sometimes the challenge with the abundance that we get with gardens, or if you are going to a store and you see maybe a really good sale, buying up a large volume. And so preservation can be a way to make sure that all that money that you have spent or the time that you've taken to grow that food in a garden gets used. And you don't end up having to put that food as wasted in the trash or in your compost. So we usually talk about 4 different types of preservation. So we have canning, which I think most people think of. We also have freezing, which is super, super easy. Dehydration, so getting all that water sucked out. And so you can turn your, like right now we're in the middle of peach season, so you could dehydrate peaches, you could can peaches, you could freeze them. And the last one that we sometimes talk about would be fermentation. So think about sauerkraut, kimchi. There's just a lot of options. And then the nice thing too, with all of these, they're becoming relatively shelf-stable products with canning and drying. You can can those foods and they become a shelf-stable products. You don't need to take up refrigerator or freezer space. Same for dehydration. With freezing, obviously we have to put that all in a freezer. But if you've got a large chest freezer or even a small freezer in an upright freezer, you can still fit quite a bit of things, because when we freeze those foods, we usually blanch them first, and that softens the cell walls so they can fit into a smaller space, which is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And then with fermentation, making like sauerkraut, kimchi, those products, even though we refrigerate them after they've been done fermenting, you can have them for months, right, in that refrigerator, so they last a long time, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to send everybody to the National Center for Home Food Preservation, which is run out of the University of Georgia's Extension. They have all the research information, tested recipes that we reference quite a bit in Illinois. And then, of course, you can always check out preservation classes that we have going on around the state, or on our website. We have a whole food preservation section of our website at extension.illinois.edu.
Very good. Well, Caitlin, we'll take a break on that note and come back with some more. Caitlin Mellendorf, nutrition educator, U of I Extension in DeWitt, Macon, and Piatt counties, our guest. More to come on the morning show. WHOW.
I'm Len Casper, the voice of the White Sox Radio Network. The Sox are right here on 92.3 FM in DeWitt County, WHOW.
Brought to you by Piatt County Collision Center, the State Bank of Bement's Monticello location, Dubson Heating and Cooling, and Kirby Medical Center in Monticello.
Hi, I'm Rob Sharkey. I'm a fifth-generation farmer from just outside of Bradford, Illinois. And whether I'm traveling the country asking people what they know about agriculture, or I'm right here in my very own soybean field, I don't have the time, and I sure don't have the patience to figure out the politics, to figure out new markets, to wade through the new regulations. That's why I'm more than happy to be a member of the Illinois soybean growers. They got my back, so I can grow these.
Become an ISG member at ilsoy.org/membership.
WHOW is Central Illinois' ag station, and that includes providing farmers information on how the commodity markets close each day and week. I'm Todd Gleason from Illinois Public Media, University of Illinois Extension, inviting you to hear the daily closing market report weekday afternoons at 5:06, and on Saturdays tune in for Commodity Week with a review of the week's markets at 8:30 in the morning, all on WHOW AM, FM, and streamed online.
Warner Hospital and Health Services expanded emergency room means big hospital tech, small hospital caring. When you need ER care, make it Warner Hospital and Health Services in Clinton. Find out how their expanded ER can help you by clicking their icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
Ramey Miller from Run Deep Coaching. Take your power back. I do holistic personal and business coaching. My service is virtual, so we can visit no matter where you are. Find out more by clicking my icon at DeWittDailyNews.com. That's DeWittDailyNews.com.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Once again, and good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. Caitlin Mellendorf, nutrition educator for the U of I Extension in DeWitt, Macon, and Piatt counties. And Caitlin, let's talk back to school nutrition, because kids are going to be getting back to school. And recently, I know in the last just year or so, my kids have taken to the actual school lunches. We packed their lunches for the first several years of their schooling, and now they really enjoy the school lunches. So let's dive into school lunches and just reassure parents. I know there's a lot of guidelines now under those meals, and how they're prepared and what's in them, and all the nutrition that comes with it. Let's speak to that to kick off this conversation.
Yeah, so schools that receive federal funding through the National School Lunch Program do, as you said, have to follow guidelines for nutrition on what sodium minimum or maximum, sodium maximums, calorie maximums, fiber, minimums, all these things for make sure that kids are receiving quality, nutrient-dense meals. And there's a lot of push in the world of school food service to make sure that meals are not just meeting those needs, but also are interesting. School meals are kind of like hospital meals. They have a terrible reputation. And so a lot of schools are working really hard to find vendors and provide foods that look appealing, taste appealing, are cooked in nutritious but also tasty ways. And so do check that out if you have not been using your school meal as an option. Check that out. See what it's like. Go enjoy lunch with your kid at their lunch period and kind of see, hey, what are they eating? Because you might be surprised at what they are able to receive. Also, that it is low cost because the schools are receiving additional funding. They can have meals at low cost, and then depending on the district, some schools are able to be completely free for every student, whether you would typically qualify for a reduced school lunch or not. More schools are shifting to this kind of universal free lunch, which is just great because sometimes parents and caregivers are getting busy, and so maybe they aren't able to pack lunch for that day. And so being able to have this lunch available is so great. And so, yeah, check that out. If you are still a parent and a family member that would prefer to pack a lunch, focus on getting those nutrient-dense foods. So I usually go back to the model of My Plate, which is the updated food pyramid guide. So the plate is more of a model of, if I look down at my plate, what am I seeing on that plate? And so the goal is to have fruits and vegetables on that plate. The goal is to have a whole grain food on that plate, as well as a lean source of protein. So just a quick refresher on grains, that could be things like bread, pancakes, oatmeal, rice, crackers, pretzels, especially things for school meals where you may not have refrigerator access. I find that if you can find a whole grain pretzel or some whole grain crackers, those are great because kids can munch on those. They've got a nice snappy, crispy crunch. And you can pair it with a protein. You can do nut butters if your school allows peanuts, or maybe a non-peanut option. And then if they do have, some kids may struggle to open containers, so do practice with them. So if you wanted to do something like a refrigerated chicken salad or tuna salad to go with those crackers, just double check that you have good cold packs, freezer packs to put in that meal, and then also that your kids are able to open those containers by themselves at lunch if a teacher or an aide is not available.
We had that problem with our kids for a few of their early meals where we were packing things, and it kept coming home, and it was like a pudding package or something like that, and we'd be like, why aren't you eating this? And they're like, well, I can't open it, and so we had to tell them, ask your lunch teacher for help, or whoever's on help that day. Ask them to open it for you, and so it went much smoother from there. What are some easy ways, Caitlin, just real quick, to make sure that those maybe things that are maybe a little more complicated sometimes, like a cheese or something like that, or like basically simplify some of those very nutrient dense foods? What's a good way to simplify some of those things and make sure that they're in the lunch and they're easy to get to and they're easy to eat quickly? Because that's another thing, kids don't have a lot of time to eat their lunches anymore. So how about that?
Yeah, so you can look at, especially when time's involved, we can still have nutrient-dense foods that are quick to eat. So think of softer things. So you mentioned a pudding cup. So that is typically made with milk. So we get a protein source as well as some calcium, which is good for kids. But also think softer things. Applesauce can be a nice soft thing. There's even some high fiber options where companies will add a little extra fiber because applesauce doesn't have a lot of fiber. If they can do softer things like carrot sticks can take a while to chew. So maybe you do like cherry tomatoes that are higher in water, and they have they can kind of pop, they can kind of melt in your mouth. And yeah, that can be a great addition for those fruits and vegetables. Do something softer with that. And then for protein, again, something that your kid can eat pretty quickly. So maybe it is something like cheese might work well for them, but maybe other kids might enjoy something like that nut butter that they can have on a sandwich. Go for softer things if that can help your kids speed up their eating.
Caitlin Mellendorf, nutrition educator, U of I Extension, DeWitt, Macon, and Piatt counties. Caitlin, let's wrap up the conversation today talking about senior nutrition programs and ways for seniors to get their share of nutrition. This is an issue as well. How about that?
Yeah, so for our seniors and our older adults that, particularly if they're living by themselves or they are less mobile, less able to get out of their home, definitely look at either a home delivered meal. So those might be examples of piecemeal, which is run through one of the local hospitals. You can also have Meals on Wheels. There's a number of different companies that do these, and they are usually low cost. And then there's also congregate meal sites, which add that social aspect. So you can come to a local center and you can meet other seniors in your community. You can have lunch together. A lot of the places that I've talked to, they will do like bingo right after lunch. So you can also have a game to play while you're there. And you get that socialization aspect. There's a lot of isolation with our older adults, and so this is an excellent way for folks to, one, get nutrition. I know as people age, what I hear from people in my classes, they struggle to cook. They just might be a mobility issue. They can't bend down as often, or it's harder to reach above their heads. Or maybe they're struggling with chopping things because maybe they've got challenges with maybe arthritis in the hands. And so having a meal prepared for you that's also meeting nutrition standards is a great option. And they are also low cost. And so check those out through your local Health and Human Services department.
What's the best way for folks to find tips and just information at the Extension website there, Caitlin? How do they do that?
So for seniors, we do a lot more stuff on like isolation and getting together. So check that out at our family page. So extension.illinois.edu/family will connect you to a lot of resources for seniors.
Easy enough. Well, Caitlin, it's always good to talk with you. Thanks for making time for us. As always, Caitlin Mellendorf, nutrition educator, U of I Extension in DeWitt, Macon, and Piatt Counties, our guest on the phone. The morning show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. Network news on the way.